So here to give us the truth that sets us free, Reverend Martin.
A newlywed couple were having breakfast, and the bride said, "I had the most wonderful dream last night. I dreamt that you gave me a beautiful gift wrap package, and when I opened it up, inside was a gorgeous diamond bracelet. What do you think that dream means?" And her husband said, "Well, in a few days it'll be Valentine's Day. Wait, maybe you'll find out then." Sure enough, on Valentine's Day, he presented his bride with a beautifully gift-wrapped package, and she opened it up, and inside was a book, How to Interpret Dreams. Well, this week we observe Valentine's Day, which usually is a celebration of romance. And if you're not currently in a romantic relationship, you may not feel as if you have very much to celebrate. But it isn't Valentine's Day, it's Saint Valentine's Day, which raises the question, who was Saint Valentine? We all know the name, but none of us seems to know much about him. The historical details are sketchy, and the whole thing is complicated by the fact that the Catholic Church recognizes 12 Saint Valentines, one of whom was a woman. And there was even once a pope named Valentine. So the history of the Valentine, of Saint Valentine's Day, is probably mostly legend. But here are the most common stories. Valentine was a Roman priest who was persecuted by the Emperor Claudius II because he performed weddings for young Christian couples. Now, the Emperor Claudius had a theory that unmarried soldiers made better fighters than those who had wives, and so he banned marriage for young men. But believing the Catholic Church dogma that weddings are a sacrament, Valentine conducted marriages in defiance of the emperor. So Claudius sentenced Valentine to death, a very ugly death. Legend says that he was beaten, stoned, and finally, on February 14th, 270 AD, he was beheaded. In that version of the story, February 14th wasn't about love. It was about a man being decapitated. So you could say that Valentine's Day celebrates those who have lost their heads. Now, some accounts say that Valentine had fallen in love with the blind daughter of his jailer, and he wrote her a letter and he signed it, "From your Valentine." And another tale says that after his death, he miraculously restored her sight. Well, St. Valentine was said to be buried north of Rome, and in the early 1800s, a catacomb was excavated, and remains thought to be those of St. Valentine were found. His skull now resides in the Chiesa di Santa Maria in Rome, and the rest of his bones were distributed around the world for memorial displays in the Czech Republic, Spain, Ireland, Scotland, England, and France. The feast of St. Valentine was established by Pope Gelasius in 496 AD. And some say that Valentine's feast day is celebrated in February because the church wanted to Christianize an ancient Roman pagan festival called Lupercalia, which centered around mating and fertility and took place in February. Others say that February 14th had already been celebrated as a lover's holiday and a day of romance because the date was thought to be the beginning of the mating season for birds. I look this stuff up so you don't have to. Well, in recent decades, with the rise of mass media, books, magazines, movies, recorded music, TV, and the internet, there's been a fantasy spun out of the notion of romantic love, a Shangri-La version of perfection that seldom, if ever, exists in real life. This fictionalized love, portrayed by movies, pop songs, and romance novels, is an impossible ideal that makes millions of people miserable because their experience can't begin to measure up to it. And the desperate search for romantic love, won't somebody please love me, is pathetic and off-putting to anyone who more or less has it together. The pitiful, needy searcher for love is really looking for someone who will make him or herself all better. And that kind of person will likely attract someone else who's deeply emotionally flawed or dysfunctional, either another emotionally needy person or a manipulative person looking for someone to control. This phenomenon was interestingly described by the famous children's author, Dr. Seuss, who once wrote, "We're all a little weird, and life's a little weird. And when we find somebody whose weirdness is compatible with ours, we join up with them and fall into mutual weirdness and call it love." Well, that's love as in marriage and dating and so forth. But of course, there are many other ways to love, which have nothing to do with romance. By preoccupying ourselves with romantic love, we risk neglecting other types of love that are more readily accessible and which may, especially in the long term, be much more healing and fulfilling. So despite the silly notions that we've developed about it, there is no greater power than love. Love has the ability to heal the world. And when the energy of love takes hold of you, resistance is futile. It has the power to heal old wounds and cleanse you of any negativity that does not serve you. As is stated in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Among our most basic human needs, right up there with oxygen, food, water, and shelter, is the need to experience love. Babies who are not given loving attention fail to thrive. And as adults, the lack of love leads to serious emotional and psychological problems. Well, perhaps part of our confusion about love is because we use that one word for all the different kinds of love. The Greeks, on the other hand, had a different word for each type of love. What they said were 7 different types. And you can think of this as a ladder, the rungs representing a hierarchy, a higher and higher love. First, they said, was ludus. And ludus is playful, casual, or non-committed love. And it involves such activities as teasing, dancing, and flirtation. And the focus is simply on fun, and sometimes also on conquest, but always with no strings attached. Ludus relationships are casual and undemanding, and they can, in spite of that, be long-lasting. Ludus works best when both parties are mature and self-sufficient. And these relationships may fall apart when only one of the parties slips into eros, which is the next category of love. Eros is sexual or passionate love, and it's the type most like our modern ideas of romantic love. In Greek myth, it's a form of madness brought about by one of Cupid's arrows. The arrow hits us, and we fall in love. Eros can be the most immature kind of love, based on infatuation or puppy love. Cupid is pictured as a short, chubby toddler in a diaper. And perhaps that's fitting because we all know who needs diapers: people with no self-control. Cher, who presumably speaks from experience, once said, "Too many women get all excited by nothing and then marry him." Well, the third rung on our ladder of love is philia. Philia, the hallmark of philia or friendship, is shared goodwill. And Aristotle believed that a person bears goodwill to another for one of 3 reasons: that that person is useful, that he's pleasant, and above all, that he's good, that is, rational and virtuous. And friendships founded on goodness are associated not only with mutual benefit, but also with companionship and dependability and trust. Philia is what the Quakers had in mind when they established Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Our fourth type of love was said to be storge. Storge is the love between family members. Storge does not depend on our personal qualities. It's the kind of love that gave rise to the phrase, blood is thicker than water. It's the kind of love that caused us to rush to defend our brother or sister against some threat or bully 10 minutes after having a knockdown, drag-out fight. Our fifth form of love is pragma, from the same root word as pragmatic. Pragma is a couple's love founded on reason or duty and one's longer-term interests. Sexual attraction takes a back seat to personal qualities, compatibilities, and shared goals. And in the days of arranged marriages, pragma was common. It's somewhat unfashionable today, but it still exists in certain high-profile celebrity and political marriages. Now, so far, every form of love we've discussed has involved give and get. So now let's move to our most important types of love, which must be unconditional. Our sixth type is philotia. Philotia is self-love, which, properly understood, is not only healthy, but necessary. I'm not talking about an inflated ego, conceit, or arrogance. Hubris, of course, promotes hostility, conflict, and injustice. But healthy self-love is similar to self-esteem, which is our recognition of our own worth. Self-love forms the basis of what we think, how we feel, and how we act. You can't really be a positive thinker if you don't love yourself. You're not going to feel good about who you are if you don't love yourself. Your actions will not be well motivated if you do not love yourself. Our degree of self-love determines not only our relationship with ourselves, but to others and to the world. People with healthy self-love and high self-esteem don't need to prop themselves up with things like income, status, or fame. They don't need crutches such as alcohol, drugs, or sex. They are able to invest themselves completely in projects and in people because they don't fear failure or rejection. They're able to love others because they love themselves. When you're able to love every part of yourself, including your so-called flaws, you're able to love others despite their so-called flaws. It's like that wonderful song that came from the 12-step movement. I love myself the way I am. And the first verse and the second verse is, I love you just the way you are. And the third verse is, I love the world the way it is. People who love themselves may suffer hurts and disappointments, but these neither damage nor diminish them. There is a reason Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Our relationships with others will never be better than our relationships with ourselves. And so we've ascended 6 rungs on the ladder of love, each rung of which is a higher love than the one before it. Self-love is the rung we must reach before we can experience the highest, most beautiful form of love, which is agape. Agape is universal love. It's love for strangers, for nature, for God. It doesn't depend on family ties or fraternity or familiarity. It isn't about shared goals or sexual attraction. Agape is universal. It is unconditional. It embraces the modern concept of altruism or humanitarianism, defined as unselfish concern for the welfare of others. Science links altruism with several benefits. In the short term, altruism leaves us with a euphoric feeling, the so-called helper's high. And in the longer term, it is associated with better mental and physical health as well as longevity. People who regularly volunteer their time and talent to people, organizations, and causes are literally helping themselves as much as they help others. Living and acting out of an agape consciousness stimulates the flow of good in our world. As we help others, others are inspired to contribute to society, raising the level of consciousness on the planet. Agape helps to build and maintain the social, psychological, and spiritual fabric that sustains and enriches us. Given the level of anger and division in our society, we could all do with quite a bit more agape. Agape is also the word used in the biblical passage known as the love chapter, which, as I mentioned earlier, is 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And agape is described there and throughout the New Testament of the Bible as an ever-giving love. That Greek word, agape, was appropriated by the early Christians to express the unconditional love of God, a love that they desired to emulate. Before agape, there was no other word to express such a great love. Agape is the love that gives without expecting anything in return. And it is more fully explained in Paul's famous letter to the Corinthians. You've heard it before, but it says it better than anything I've ever found. If I could speak in any language in heaven and earth, but didn't love others, I would only be making meaningless noise like a loud gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and if I knew all the mysteries of the future and knew everything about everything, but didn't love others, what good would I be? And if I had the gift of faith, so I could speak to a mountain and make it move, without love, I would be no good to anybody. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would be of no value whatsoever. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Love does not demand its own way. Love is not irritable, and it keeps no record of when it has been wronged. It is never glad about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Love will last forever, but prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will all disappear. We now know only a little, and even the gift of prophecy reveals little. But when perfection comes, the imperfect disappears. There are three things that will endure: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Agape is all about seeing through the eyes of love. When we look down on people, when we judge them harshly, when we write them off, 90% of the time it's because we don't know their backstory. We haven't walked in their shoes. We don't know how they were raised. We don't know the challenges they've faced, or perhaps still face. We don't know what's going on in their homes, at their jobs, or with their health. If we understood their story, we'd be more likely to cut them some slack. Consider this. It may be easy for you to be positive, to be loving. You've had the benefit of this teaching. What's that? You've been in this teaching for years and still sometimes find yourself being judgmental and negative. Well, think of those people who push your buttons and they haven't had the benefit of this teaching. And imagine how difficult life must seem to them. So give them a break. They're not bad people. They're doing the best they can, considering their circumstances and what they believe. We do judge people based on our own backgrounds. We say things like, I'd never do that. Well, you don't know what you'd do if you had their background, their experiences, and their circumstances. Been said that love isn't about finding a perfect person. It's about seeing an imperfect person perfectly. But, you say, what if I'm dealing with someone who's a mess or obnoxious or a reprobate and has clearly brought this all on himself? Well, I'm still not the judge. It's still my responsibility to treat that person with love, because people need loving the most when they deserve it the least. What if God put that difficult person in your life so you could help lift him up? What if God put that spiteful woman next door so you could, through the power of agape love, help her find a more peaceful life? As Mother Teresa said, be the living expression of God's kindness. Kindness in your face, kindness in your eyes, kindness in your smile. Let no one ever come to you without leaving better and happier. Love is that condition in which the happiness of another person is important to your own. There's a very old song whose lyrics include, I want to be happy, but I won't be happy till I make you happy too. Now, can I make you happy? Not really. Should I try to make you happy? Oh, yes. Agape love cares about the well-being and happiness of others. There's another old song, country tune, called Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. Well, there is no wrong place to look for love. And you don't have to go looking for love when it's where you came from. But just because we came from love isn't enough. We must put love into action. You learn to speak by speaking. You learn to study by studying. You learn to run by running. You learn to work by working, and by the same token, you learn to love by loving. Oh, love isn't everything, but it's a lot. The song, All You Need Is Love, may have been a big hit for the Beatles, but it's not really true. Ernest Holmes frequently quoted the poet Robert Browning, all's love, yet all is law. And Ernest said that love rules through law. Love is the divine givingness. Law is the way. I say it this way, love is the giver, and law is the system by which the gifts are distributed. In any event, without law, the universe would not exist. There would just be a great big oozing thing of feelings and emotions. And if you know people who do everything on the basis of emotion with very little reason, you know what a mess I'm talking about. But without love, the universe would still be here, but it would be a machine. No feelings, no emotion, no warmth. So love does not make the world go round. Law makes the world go round, but love makes the ride enjoyable. Fall in love with your life. Life is meant to be loved. Life should be a great adventure. It's not how many trips we make around the sun. It's how much we've enjoyed the ride. With enough love, the roughest journey becomes not just bearable, but joyous. A few years ago, I wrote my own version of Paul's love letter to the Corinthians. So bear with me as I share this with you. I don't claim to be trumping the Apostle Paul. If I could speak in any language on earth and knew all computer programming codes but didn't love others, I would only be making meaningless noise, like a car with a 10,000-watt sound system. If I could predict the stock market, and if I could foretell the future and knew everything about everything but didn't love others, what good would I be? And if I had the gift of faith so that I could speak to a crack house and make it move out of my neighborhood, without love, I would be no good to anybody. And if I gave everything I have to the United Way and even signed a living will, donating my body and all its organs, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would be of no value whatsoever. Love is patient and kind. Love does not give the finger to someone who cuts me off on Interstate 4. Love is not jealous or boastful or rude. Love does not care how much money someone else has. Love does not brag about how much money I have. Love does not call members of the other political party evil, idiots, commies, or Nazis. Love never says my way or the highway. Love is not irritable or obnoxious, and it doesn't keep score. It is never glad about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins. Love never gives up, never loses faith, and always lasts regardless of circumstances. Possessions may be lost or stolen. Fortunes may disappear. Family and friends may move or pass away. Governments may collapse. Political parties may rise and fall. No one can predict the future. And what we know is outweighed by what we don't know. But this we can say. There are three things that will endure: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Millions of people are living with the pain of loneliness and neglect, and millions more are afraid that someday they'll find themselves alone and unloved. But the fact is, love is available everywhere in infinite variety. How do we get love? Well, remember the Jesus saying, as you give, so shall you receive. And in no other aspect of life is this more true than in the area of love. We can only have love by giving it away. The more freely we give love, the more love we have. Ernest Holmes, writing in the Science of Mind textbook, put it this way: the one who has learned to love all people will find plenty of people who will return that love. Until we learn to love, we are not sending out love vibrations. And not until we send out those vibrations can we receive love in return. Love is the grandest healing and drawing power on earth. Our lives are made possible by love, and love sees to it that everything we need to live our lives is supplied. Only to the degree that we love are we really living. Only to the degree that we love are we experiencing our highest and best. So I'll leave you with my favorite poem about love. It's by James Thompson. Let my voice ring out and o'er the earth, through all the grief and strife, with a golden joy and a silver mirth. Thank God for life. Let my voice swell out through the great abyss to the great blue sky above, with a chord of faith in the harp of bliss. Thank God for love. Let my voice ring out beneath and above the whole world through. O my love and life, O my life and love, thank God for you. Have a Namaste Valentine's Day.